Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for tuning in on a Wednesday morning. I really appreciate all of your time. Today is a special one, especially because financing is such a huge part of the actual journey on buying an EV. I know personally for myself, when I bought an EV, I looked into where is the best place to buy a Tesla, to finance it, to even refinance. And so obviously we have Tenet Energy here today, the CEO and founder. And I'm very excited to bring him in and just talk about how is financing a part of the actual journey, what they're specifically, how they started and what that journey has been, where they're going. And really, again, what's the tenant difference? How are they making a big change and disrupting that space, especially as the transition to EVs is growing faster than ever. So let's add in Alex. Hey, how's
Hey,
it going, Alex?
hey, nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. How's your day going so far?
Good. Pretty good so far. Just another day in New York.
Yeah, obviously you're also in the startup space, so I know you're hustling probably every day. But
Yeah.
um, if you could just give us a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Alex, born and raised in Germany, actually, in Munich, and then went to Stanford for college. Basically, just always wanted to go to the US. That's kind of the promised land, where entrepreneurship happens. And after going to college, I did a double major in applied math and philosophy. I first worked at a couple of hedge funds, specifically leading their AI investment strategies. And then eventually it just became time to do my own stuff. So started doing my own startups. And after a couple of in-betweens, here we are with Tenant. And I couldn't be more excited about what we're doing, specifically in climate and fintech.
Yeah, no, for myself, I was able we obviously met through one of your advisors joining, actually an Uber with one of our members. Shout out to Greg just for making that introduction. But I remember just doing the math. I was able to, because that's one of the things we do when we talk with potential partners or just even when we're looking at not only potential partners, but just what is that customer experience like? And I remember signing on and realizing I was going to save $120 a month. I mean, that's over $1,100 a year, $1,200 a year, $1,400 a year almost. And that's a game changer, especially, given where the economy is, especially today. And so when I realized that, um, not only was I like, sign me up, and actually I believe you can keep me honest here. I was the first California resident to sign up for Tenant.
Yeah, number one.
Yeah, so that was a huge privilege, but being able to save that much a year, especially with a young family, being able to put that money back into, educating them, sports and things like that, it's a big deal. So I'm really excited to have you here, and really just talk again about what is Tenant doing, and where are you guys headed. But I would love for you to just give the origin story. You talked a little bit
Yeah.
about your college education, coming here from Germany and doing startups, but why are you getting into EVs? Why are you
Yeah.
trying to make a difference? And the one caveat I wanted to make is that it's not just about these automakers that are making these cars. We need everybody on board making it happen, and financing is a huge part of that. So, thank you for all that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me. Really, sort of the the most important thing to why we started Tenet is we want to make renewable energy affordable for everyone, right? And the biggest lever to do so is build financial infrastructure, right? Affordability is the number one hurdle to adoption, and for us, the inspiration was there's sort of this big global energy transition happening. And in my last company, I was building large data centers in the middle of nowhere in Texas that were actually powered by wind energy and solar energy and so forth. And I think had a little bit of a unique insight into what's going on in energy markets and in climate and in general. And then also just the realization that legacy lenders, traditional financial systems aren't able to take advantage of the unique opportunities of the energy transition. And we kind of think of them in terms of three buckets. One is you have this unprecedented government tailwinds with the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm sure you've seen that in a bunch of years as well, especially now with Tesla cutting prices. A lot of the models becoming available and eligible for these tax credits, which make a huge difference. But all of a sudden, right, you have like $300 billion worth of government funds, and you kind of have this Sudoku puzzle where it's really difficult for the average person to take advantage of that. So it's on companies like us to actually distill that into a product that makes sense and is easy to use. The second thing is, right, EVs, what's unique about EVs, right? It's the electric part. It's not the vehicle part. It's the fact that they are energy products. It is that they need to be charged if it's at home, if it's a public charger, wherever it might be. And in general, they're even more powerful when combined with a solar rooftop or a battery storage and so forth, where you can make sure you're, robust against power outages and whatnot, right? You can charge your car with that battery, but you can also put the energy back into the grid. You can generate clean electricity from your solar panel. In general, there's a different type of association and engagement with your car, right? People get really excited about their EVs because they're amazing batteries and computers on wheels. A gas car is just not driving that same inspiration. And then the third thing, and that's more for us, right, is we work with a lot of sustainability focused financial institutions that specifically want to offer better terms for electric vehicles and other types of decarbonizing investments. And they come to us because we show them data. We give them proof that they're actually making a difference, because now you can actually show a group of EVs how much they are causing an avoidance in carbon emissions because people are now driving electric instead of a gas car. And that just brings us back to the mission of Tenant, right? We're an integrated EV financing platform. And the entire business is, hey, we're not going to just try and make you feel better about getting an EV. We want to help you save money doing so, right? We're not like the climate warrior society. We're actually not the ones saying we're going to plant a tree every time you use an EV with us. It's more around, can we levelize the cost of an EV or make it even cheaper than an equivalent gas car so that just more people can afford them and ultimately more people can save money while also reducing their carbon footprint.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Especially, I think, when I met you a year ago, and it's crazy, it's only been a year, and I don't even know if it's been one full year yet. It could have been already, but it clicked, what you guys are doing, and even for myself, knowing that you guys are pioneering this. Again, even a year ago, it just felt. There was nothing I could find personally. I bought 3 Teslas so far, and all of them. Some of them were through a couple of credit unions, but those were always probably the better rates. But none of them were able to get me as low of a rate as what you guys are doing. So if you could just talk about what are you guys doing different than the typical financial institution. And I know obviously the finance has been the institution stuff has been going through crazy stuff with Silicon.
Nuts, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I think we had side story. We had this scheduled a week ago, and that was the weekend after Silicon Valley Bank went under. So
yeah.
I know, but yeah, maybe actually, maybe we could talk a little bit about that. I mean, obviously that's in relation to this, but talk a little bit about how, the finance industry has just been getting impacted very negatively, obviously. And then how that's impacted you. But really what I want to focus on, what is Tenet doing different than most finance institutions?
No, I absolutely would love to talk about that too. Just generally because it's so on top of people's minds, and that's just been this crazy like unraveling of this like Russian dolls system of how banks operate, right? And most importantly, actually, like we're doing business as usual, and that's not because of myself or anybody. It's because of the team. It's crazy that within 48 hours, we just completely were able to switch over. And that's just because our team was grinding away day and night in order to make that happen and serve the customers that we have. just that there aren't any issues. And because, right, like SVB is one of our partners. And by the way, they've been incredibly supportive ever since we started partnering with them, because the people are really great. They're always there for the startup ecosystem. And I really think the world's not going to be the same without them. But that being said, luckily, we had different financial partners beyond them. So we were sort of
Yeah.
diversified. But the two, also the engineering team, product team, ops, everybody, finance, they just pulled all-nighters for a couple of days to make sure that there's not going to be any issues for the customers, right? Because we were a little bit dependent on SVB and some types of the infrastructure that we use, but yeah, within a weekend, team absolutely crushed it. I was so impressed. It was really, I think, for an early stage company, one of these like trial by fire moments. And fortunately, we passed, right? Specifically, more so to us, sort of what is it that we do about the financial product, right? And there's kind of different levers to pull. The most important thing that we asked ourselves when we started this company is, what is unique about an EV versus a gas car? What is it that a traditional lender, if that's a big bank or a credit union or whomever, wouldn't do that we can? And the thing is that EVs have tax credits, they have a battery, they have over-the-air software upgrades, they have less maintenance because they have 1/100th the moving parts that a gas car has, so they last longer and they depreciate slower. So we wanted to help people unlock that value. And so what we do is we allow borrowers to defer up to 25% of the price of the car until the end of their loan term. And then we help them, if they're eligible for tax credits, for example, they can defer $7,500. And then we help them get those tax credits over time. The same that we have data on our end in terms of these batteries for EVs, right? They're still very useful after the life of the car. So if anything happens there, they can be recycled, they can be repurposed. And by the way, not a lot of people know this actually, but before we actually started the financing part, so this is a little bit of the origin story, for a little bit of shits and giggles, we put together a bunch of end-of-life Tesla batteries and repurposed them for a commercial energy storage application. Specifically because these batteries still have 80% capacity once they're no longer useful for a car, because you have so many cycles in terms of frequency of how they're needed for the car. But for storage, right, if it's for like a backup generator for a hotel or even stabilizing the grid, you still get like 12 years out of these batteries. It's crazy. And that has a dollar value. And for us, it's more around how do we have data-driven insights that help somebody reduce their monthly payment by $150 or more. And then on the APR side, we work with the best sustainability-focused financial institutions. And quite proudly, we did a first of its kind deal with a Department of Energy green bank. And now we're working with a bunch more. And they are nonprofits. They're specifically focused on increasing the adoption of zero carbon mobility, like EVs. And they're looking to us and partnering with us in order to actually make that happen. And that was a ton of work, but it really is starting to pay off. And for them, we're able to give them, insights on, hey, this is the sort of economic impact that you're having, but also here's the carbon impact that you're driving. And so for us, it's really combining around how can we reduce the monthly payment? How can we offer best-in-class APRs? And bundling all of that in a platform that makes it just stupid easy for somebody to get financing, where they look to us as somebody they can trust, right? It's so important. And I'm so grateful that we already have double-digit percentage of repeat customers. That's kind of crazy, right? For a lender, usually people are like, okay, whatever, I'm getting the loan, right? And like, don't bother me anymore, right? But here we really want to lean into, like, we're your energy transition partner, right? We're more than just a lender. And we're building innovative technology, starting with the EV, that's really meant to help the renewable energy adoption. And hopefully, right, we'll soon be able to offer better insights. We can, if you don't mind pulling up that one slide on the dashboard, for example, just point to it quickly at the end. The basically once somebody finances with us, they can start tracking, and it's kind of like this gamification of how many dollars am I saving by driving my EV, how many CO2 emissions am I driving.
Super cool.
And what we're actually going to be able to do, and this is still kind of in beta, is carbon credits. So our customers can actually get cash back from carbon credits that we have verified with different institutions, and just other ways of also just making it more multiplayer, right? Compare yourself with your friends, ranking, stuff like that. We just want to make it like something fun, right? You're
Amen.
driving this EV, you're saving money, you're saving carbon emissions. You can actually build really cool stuff on top of that. And a bank just doesn't get it, right? A credit union doesn't get it. And by the way, that's ultimately why they're working with us now, right? They're partnering with Tenet because they know they can't do it themselves. So it's on us to
Great.
just keep innovating.
Yeah, what you're doing, it sounds like you're making a Tesla, but in the financing space almost, right?
Yeah,
It's kind of funny how you literally you talked about all of the things that make an EV great, and and specifically Tesla was the one that pioneered that. And just like I think you even said, because Tesla's retaining their value. I know Tesla just got an award. I believe it was by Kelly Blue Book for
yeah,
after 5 years of ownership, they have the best value. But I remember a lot of the early EVs, some of like the Nissan Leafs, after 3 years, those things were
yeah,
worth like 20. I mean, I'm kind of joking here, 20 to 30% of its original value. But what I just love about what you guys are doing is you guys aren't taking, okay, all right, let's just take one small angle. You're looking at every aspect of what makes an EV great and all of the benefits of driving an EV, like the tax credits, like retention on value of ownership over, let's say, 5 years, and then really even being able to defer some of the like 25%. I mean, that's huge.
yeah,
Um, and so, that ultimately is even what made it cheap for me. And not only that, as Autopay, you guys have a thing where if you set up auto payment, I think it's
yeah,
0.25% off. And
yeah,
so I always make sure that was just set up, and it's just like set up, and I just kind of don't even pay attention anymore. But I love that because it's not like you're doing it's not like going to Bank of America or Wells Fargo, and or even Chase and just getting a regular car loan.
yeah,
They
exactly.
they have one thing that just fits all, and they're not adapting it, or because again, they probably don't have the time at the size that they're at. But that's what I love about what you guys are doing. What would you say were some of the challenges to kind of get there? Sorry,
Mm,
before I do that, I want to mention, because I think there was a question specifically, do you guys refinance? And of course you do, but
we
I would
do.
like first let's just talk about what you guys actually do.
Yeah,
I don't know if this slide over here makes sense, but let's just lay out what exactly do you guys do? I don't know if this is the right slide for that per se, but you guys obviously are doing everything. But what exactly do you guys do as far as financing goes? And then
yep.
let's get to some of the challenges that got you to where you are in that. Like, how did you guys get to this point where you didn't just stand this up overnight, but did you guys, as you guys were coming into the industry, facing a lot of backlash, or what did you have to ultimately do different?
Yeah. So it's like the core product is really simple, right? It's EV financing, and that's either purchase financing for new or used cars or refinancing. And there's two ways that somebody can come to us. Either they go on Tenant.com and they already have the car that they want to buy. They, if that's new or used, or they have an existing EV and they want to get refinancing. And we've built out the flow so that it only takes as fast as somebody can type. You can do it from your couch at home. It's going to take you 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how fast your thumbs move, right? And because really, right, like in general, and that's sort of table stakes, but the legacy way of doing it is just so painful, right? You got to go somewhere, you got to sit in front of somebody. It takes hours. You got some Joe Schmo who's going to ask you all these questions. We've just automated all of this. We pull all of that information so you don't need to. And it should just really be a delightful experience and something that also just like is informative, right?
Yeah, one comment I wanted to make, not to interrupt you, was even if I don't go to a bank, that process, yes, is very painful. But even using some of these websites where they take in your information and then they pump you to 30 websites. So not only are they selling all of your information by the time
Yeah.
it's done, like I can't tell you how many auto financing companies I literally got calls from. But you still don't, like, even after I do all that, I've realized like you're still not getting the answers that you need.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. So the whole part is just painful and excruciating. But yeah, go
Yeah,
for
the
it.
whole process is always kind of adversarial. You always think like you're getting fished or like taken advantage of somehow. And again, that's just for us one of the core and tenets, right? Not to be sort of like too cute about the name, and we can get to why we chose that name. Has nothing to do with the movie, by the way, right? But it's like one of these like principles is trust here, right? And especially when it comes to dealing with somebody's car and their money and whatnot, we really want to make it so that somebody can it just becomes a no-brainer for somebody to trust us, right? And we do that with a user experience, a user interface, customer service that hopefully is best in class. We cannot always get it right. That's impossible to do. Sometimes we have slip ups, but if we do, we try and correct them immediately. So the first way of getting to us is just on our site, right? You basically, if you're a repeat customer, if you're looking for refinancing, if you just want to, get pre-qualified or approved for either your new car or your used car, you can get to our website. The other way is we also now partner more and more with other platforms, other businesses that offer tenant to their customers. And that could be dealerships, that could be dealer networks, online auto marketplaces, and can't really talk about it that much, but also some OEMs. And we're obviously really excited about helping those business partners better cater towards their highest growth segment, which is obviously EVs, right? EVs, the sales are doubling every 2 years. It's kind of like the EV Moore's Law, right? The trajectory is just nuts. So obviously all of these platforms are starting to wake up to how do we better service that customer? How do we build an experience that really makes sense and that leverages what makes EVs unique, right? People want a different experience. They want to have a digital experience. They want to have data-driven insights. They want to be able to save money. And they also want to take the stress and anxiety out of how do I get the car? How do I charge it? How do I deal with permitting, installation, for example, for a charger or battery storage? And that's on us, right? We've built a user experience that integrates all of this. And our goal is really, can we be part of this fabric that powers the growth of the EV ecosystem?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, especially with all the stuff that's going on with financial institutions, I think it's important. Trust is more important than ever. Even seeing y'all navigate through, obviously, the Silicon Valley Bank situation, it was a pretty seamless experience. So it was great to, see how well that was handled and just, again, creating a seamless process to make that transition, despite all that's going on. But really, again, offering and coming into an industry that has literally not not really changed much, and the process is completely is completely painful, right? Going in and talking, like it's almost like going and buying a car today. If I went into any dealer network and I sit there, I remember in 2019 I bought my wife her and I, we went and bought a Honda Pilot in 2019. I went in there, I negotiated as fast as I could because I had to get to work. I
Yep.
negotiated the price. She was still there half the day after I left.
Oh my
Just
God.
because. So it's one of those things where, what you guys are doing just makes it quick. Obviously, to put that in tandem with, like, let's say going and getting a Tesla, it's a really seamless process. But what were some of the challenges to kind of get and stand up the things that you are now? I mean, when people, even let's say, how have the other financial institutions reacted to kind of what you're doing? Are they still sleeping? Are they awake? Kind of what's the landscape look like?
Yeah, I think on a 36,000-foot view for all the big banks and whatnot, EVs are still too small of a market to really spend a lot of mental cycles on, right? Because it's only 6%, not even 10% of their portfolio or of their sales.
Yeah.
And entities like Wells Fargo, their left arm is so far away from their right arm, they ultimately wouldn't know what to do about that growth. And obviously, right, when you build a company, when you build a startup, you think about what is it that I really want to have an impact on? What is sort of the highest order goal that we have? And right, Tenet, the name, by the way, just to like complete that thought, was not about anything to do with the movie. It was more around what's the definition of the word, right? Which is principle and belief. And I think for us, it's very clear is that socioeconomic wealth correlates with energy consumption. And the more energy we're able to consume in a sustainable way, the better everybody is off on the entire planet. So we want to build financial technology that actually enables that. And with EVs, the way that we can achieve that goal, but also differentiate ourselves in a defensible way, is how do we build a platform, not just a lending product. Anybody can do that, sort of in quotation marks, but it's around how do we marry financially compliant lending with a differentiated view on what is an EV. It's a battery and computer on wheels, and you can capture data in a proprietary way on that really informs how you offer those loans in the first place, and able to, even over time at scale, offer better and better terms for the end customer, right? Because you have better data on how do EVs perform, how effectively are the borrowers doing, how can we have a better understanding of maintenance and so forth. And nobody has that data, right? Definitely not a Wells Fargo or a Capital One or Bank of America. They don't have any data infrastructure in order to take advantage of that, but we do. And then the last thing is around, well, EVs are energy assets, right? They have to be charged somehow, and people look towards charger installation, batteries, solar, and so forth. And so we partner with different installation platforms all over the country and make that part of our offering. And so you really have this combination of um, data plus lending plus ecosystem integrations that is very difficult for others, traditional lenders, to build themselves. And kind of the case in point is that a lot of them are now interested with partnering with us because they kind of realize, oh shit, like we wouldn't ever be able to do this ourselves. It's going to cost us an insane amount of money and brain power and bandwidth. So it rather makes sense to buy than build. They would rather license us or integrate with us. And, I think we'd be interested in doing so as long as we can achieve our mission, right, around furthering the cause of renewable energy. And
Totally.
staying true to really focusing on partners that singularly are focused on that.
Yeah. No, makes sense. But yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. What would you say, like, what have you started to see in the EV space? Because so we'll talk to, let's say, a lot of accessory companies from our perspective, and they'll always tell us like shoot that sales will shoot up typically like during the last couple weeks of the quarter. And that's when they know like kind of how they get a pulse on how the EV market's going really and how many Teslas are being sold. But how is how things changed in 2023 versus 2022? Obviously, with
Yeah.
the EV tax credit, thankfully, the current the current administration for presidency obviously has made some changes, but I think initially it was pretty insane to see some of the the random. I don't know if the best word's random, but just how certain things just didn't make sense with the EV tax credit. I'll put it that way. And so,
Yeah.
how are things different this year? What have you seen, especially with the price cuts? What's going on from probably a volume standpoint in the EV space? Even though I guess it really is only 6 to 10% of of EVs being sold.
Yeah, I think like the simple truth for us is EVs are such good technology that people will end up wanting to buy them regardless of what happens, right? If there's tax credits or not, if there's any other type of price cuts, etc. It's just, if you compare an EV with an equivalent gas car, right? A Tesla is just an insanely good product, right? All else equal. So our baseline was always EVs are going to grow through the roof in terms of adoption, no matter what happens. If there's sort of government tailwinds or not, if there's price cuts or not.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of these other factors now help accelerate that, right? The fact that Tesla cut prices because they can, because they have much better margins, has now also incentivized Ford to start cutting prices, and other OEMs will start cutting prices. And what happened is a lot more people are waking up to the idea, oh, I'm actually eligible for these tax credits, right? It's now only becoming part of what people are aware of, because it's this kind of like esoteric, sort of complicated subject last year at least, but now it's been simplified, more straightforward. Our organic volume tripled the next day after the Tesla price cuts, right? Because a lot of people were like, oh, I want to find a financial partner that helps me take advantage of the value of my tax credits on day one, not on 12 months after I get the car, but actually increasing the affordability of that vehicle when I want to buy it. And so that was, that's super helpful for us. And that's something that just like pulls forward the timeline a little bit. But the nice thing with EVs is just generally the tech is so much better than the comparison of gas cars, that over time people will just naturally gravitate towards it. And I do think 2022, people were still a little bit sleepy on EVs. There's kind of like still the early movers and adopters. I
Yeah.
think 2023 is really the inflection point where you had this crazy combination, right? Remember the high gas prices a year ago, right? $7 gas. And a lot of people all of a sudden were like, what the hell am I doing? I'm paying crazy prices for something that is, outcompeted by better technology.
Yeah.
And so many people are more looking towards making the switch. And also what we've noticed, by the way, from our customers, especially with families, they have all gas cars, they get their first EV, and then all of a sudden they're hooked. And then they're replacing, if they have a second car, for example, for their partner. Yeah, maybe like you, man. All of a sudden, you kind of have, you don't have like, you used to have this like Ford family and Cadillac family and whatnot, right? You kind of had people for generations married to the same model or type of make. Now it's like you have an EV family, right? That people really are just convinced by the technology and the savings by owning that EV. And that's something at least we've been noticing, where a lot of people now, first time buyers, are kind of like dipping their toe in the water. And then after a year, they're just hooked and they're looking to replace anything else with an EV.
Yeah, I wanted to. So this boggled my mind. I never knew that like a GM Sierra or Yukon like maxed out was like one of the other families I was with. They said it's like maxed out. It's like $110,000, and I'm and obviously every seat has a TV in it and all that other stuff. So it's got the full bells and whistles. But the funny thing is like you buy that. Now I haven't even talked about the payment plan you're gonna need just to haul your family around for gas.
Yeah.
And I think it's exactly like you said for my family. I have two boys and two girls. And so, it's obviously a big growing family. And for us, we have a Model X 6-seater. And so obviously the family can't grow anymore. But for us, it was just one of those things where gas, especially at $7, it was almost, you're literally paying anywhere from $500 to $800 a month for gas. And as you said, once you get an EV and you're just plugging, your gas station is your home, or even if you're going to the supercharger, it's a fourth the price, if not cheaper. Maybe, and so it's just one of those things. It's just, as you said, it's about awareness. And I love, I just love your mentality and your knowledge on that, where it's just like these cars are so much better. It's just, it's almost like the Tesla, the mindset. I don't know, again, know Obviously, I don't think you ever worked there, but it's just, it's a Tesla mindset where it's like they wanted to make the best cars on the planet to make this transition as easy as possible. You guys are taking that mentality and making financing really simple because the decision is easy once you get there. And it's like you said, it sounds like, a lot of it is just about awareness and families that have been kind of bought into these old OEM companies or just in general. Like once they kind of get their first whiff of an EV, the transition is just really seamless. So I think, yeah, that all makes sense, and it's pretty insane. But I would love to talk to you about, how is the EV or how is financing, in the world of getting us to a sustainable future. What does that exactly look like? I think again we have this graphic here, and it kind of
Mm,
just go this view. What exactly is like the future? I mean, I love this because it's got everything in it. It's got obviously the cars, semis. We can get a Tesla semi on there. It's got the battery packs, obviously the grid, solar panels, and wind. But where exactly, is like what's entailed in the whole world of getting us to a sustainable future from a financing standpoint?
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's like two ways to look at it. One is, how do you reach the customer that wants financing when they actually want to be reached in the most frictionless, seamless way possible? How do you make it in terms of an experience where it's delightful instead of painless, where it's friendly and trusting instead of adversarial and kind of like penalizing? And also, to my point earlier, where we're having a lot more business partners, how do we reach them in a way where they already might be familiar with? Look, I think dealerships are not going to go away anytime soon, right? We still have people who want to buy and kick the tires there, or on an online marketplace, or from an OEM like Tesla.com directly, where they integrate Tenet and we reach them with an embedded, integrated way in the best possible fashion. And then the second here is, how do we build financial products that are actually EV native, right? That aren't just an auto loan, how they used to do them for a gas car, and then you try and like, put a square into a round peg hole, and just trying to effectively like kind of curve fit what an auto loan product for an EV should like. We truly believe one of our values is decide for yourself. And it's really just a sort of nicer way of saying first principles thinking, really reasoning from the ground up and deciding for yourself what it should be like. And that actually really matters for financial products, right? You shouldn't just say, what is financing like for a traditional car loan and how do we make it work for an EV? We should think about, you have an EV, how would you build from scratch financing for that?
Yep.
And that's why we did it around tax credits, residual value of the battery, the better maintenance, software upgrades, and climate focused partners. And that doesn't just apply to EVs, that will also apply to battery storage, solar rooftops, heat pumps, home chargers. And that's a combination of us building a user interface that allows people insight into how do we make that decision on the financing. And on the other hand, working with different financial institutions like banks and credit unions and investment funds, and innovate with them together on what should the future of financing for batteries or for heat pumps or for chargers look like, right? Because that doesn't actually exist. That's actually not a thing. Solar financing exists, right? That's like pretty common. But EV loans, Tenet is the first one in the world.
Yeah.
The same with charger installation, and then heat pump financing, battery storage. It's on companies like us to actually find creative, innovative ways to, one, make financial institutions comfortable, right? We ultimately still have to build something for them where they have compliance and regulation and generally guardrails, right? Because there's a ton of ton of bells and whistles for good reason associated with that. But for the end bar, or something where they truly believe this is something that actually appreciates who I am as an adopter and it appreciates what I want to buy, which is something that's renewable energy. And that's really where we slot in, right? And couldn't be more proud. I think it's the most important thing that we could do.
Yeah, and of course, I do have to ask the question: what is the biggest difference for financing a Tesla versus the other companies? You don't have to mention other companies, but I have to ask that question.
Well, I think Tesla also just as a partner currently is the best one that we have in terms of partnering with Tenet on documentation, on an integrated purchasing experience, on helping us grow as much as, we're obviously a much smaller fish than they are. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to make up the size difference. But actually, the entire process, I think, is the best in class that we're able to offer for Tesla versus any other OEM. And that's mainly because of one, obviously, Tesla is still 70% of market share, and that's where most of our financings are. But two, especially because Tesla, the company, makes it really easy and seamless to partner with somebody like us. And the benefit is that hopefully our Tesla customers are really happy about being able to get their car with financing that makes sense and just enjoy their ride, right? It's an amazing car, and we just want to make it as easy as possible for them to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because yeah, I feel Tesla in general has completely changed the way someone buys a car, and I think obviously you guys jumping on and obviously reinventing the process in a lot of ways yourself. It's almost like a match made in heaven. So I just want to
Yep.
kind of talk about what that experience was like. But one of the questions I wanted to show, you'll see it here. It's actually how does Tenant's APR and credit requirements compare to what a buyer can get from Tesla directly, both leasing APR and purchase APR?
Yep. Yeah, so pretty easy actually. So Tesla doesn't do financing themselves per se. There isn't like a loan that you get from Tesla directly. You get it from one of their first or third party lenders. And that could be like Wells Fargo or US Bank and stuff like that. And so the APRs there, we're actually able to beat most of them most of the time because of the sustainability focused financial institutions that we work with. Because for them, we show them data that one, the borrower, an EV driver, if you actually look at, and not to be too nerdy about this, but if you look at the credit loss rates, an EV driver has a 73% lower loss rate than an equivalent gas car driver for any FICO score, which just means is they're more principled, maybe they're more ethical, they're more focused on having the car. So
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
just less risky actually. Like EV people are just better borrowers, period. And then the
Yeah.
second thing that we show them data on is if there is, and by the way, we haven't had that yet, if there is an event of a repossession, right? If somebody can't, if there's like fraud, or if somebody cannot pay their car payment, or they just say, look, like I don't want the car anymore, whatever reason it might be, we can point to, because of our data on the battery and the EV, we can show those institutions the repossession value is actually a lot higher than you thought. And publicly available data, you can actually look that up now with Kelly Black Book, which measures secondhand car prices, that the secondhand prices for EVs, specifically Tesla, are much more stable than for gas cars over the last few years. So it's already starting to prove out where people are understanding that EVs last a lot longer. Gas cars, the expected lifetime was like 6 to 8 years on average before they get sent somewhere else. EVs last like, I mean, so far there hasn't been any EV that's been sort of like non-functional anymore, right? There's EVs with millions of miles. So let's just make a basic assumption around 14 to 16 years. They just generally keep their value a lot longer. They're functional for a much longer period of time. So what that means, actually, we can go to our financial institution and show them your risk adjusted yield on offering financing through us is actually a lot higher because, well, the risk is much lower. So that's why we're able to offer better APRs. And for the rest of the question, we don't do leasing. We only do loans. And actually, another fun fact, is about 6 years ago, 75% of all EVs were leased. And I think that's mainly
Wow.
because people weren't as comfortable with the tech yet, right? It's kind of like a new thing. Do I really want to own it? Do I want to be liable for whatever happens? But now it's the other way around. 75% of cars, EVs, are financed with a loan because people actually know they want to own it, right? After they pay off their loan, they want to own that car. They want to keep it for a very long time. They're comfortable with the technology. So you've kind of seen this huge flip simply because, and back to the earlier point, the tech is just so much better. And
Yep.
people are now understanding and appreciative of that.
Yeah, I remember a little bit of that transition, at least from the Bay Area. I remember when leasing a Nissan Leaf was what, 150, $200, but it was mainly to get access to the carpool lane, especially for commuting. There was a lot, at least from a California perspective. So it's really interesting to see that transition happen. Obviously, I've had my Model X for about 3.5 years now, so I've been phased out of the carpool lane, but it's just interesting to kind of talk about that fact. But one thing, so we had another couple of questions that I thought I would hit you with. So hopefully I'm not. It doesn't feel like we're putting you on the spot here.
No,
But
would love to.
Yaman asked as well, what does Alex think about traditional banks pulling back from financing ICE purchases slash leases? Does he foresee the capital switching to financing EVs? Leases and purchases, and in what time frame?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, and and let me add to that one of the reasons we founded this company, right, is that everyone and their mother in financial markets is there. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Sorry,
you
I'm
kind
having
of
a
cut out.
technical issue.
Yeah, I can hear you still. You there? Oh,
One second. I don't know what's going on, but I think my computer just is having an issue.
yeah, you're good right
Just give it
now. I'm
one
kind of
minute.
still. Yep.
Yeah, let's hope it gets back to normal in just a sec.
You're gonna have to tell everyone to turn off their
1 minute.
laptops. You get all the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Okay.
let's hope
I
it
think you're
let's hope
good
we
now.
get back to normal pretty quickly. Yeah, okay,
Yeah, I think
perfect.
you're good. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Um, yeah, so in financial markets, everyone is focused on, yes, can I make money with this? But we have this new mandate around sustainability and decarbonization. And how does that new thing that we're looking at help us with that? Right? Everybody has to get paid. Everybody has to like be able to eat. So they still have to be able to make money on any investment, right? That's just how the economy works. But now everybody is also looking for, is this something that actually helps reach my net zero carbon goal? And so what that means is a lot of these banks, they're still funding gas cars. And I think they will do that for a very long time. But companies like us, Tenet, we're the first actually in the US to have an EV only loan portfolio that banks can fund and finance. And with that also comes data on, sure, this is how much economic yield you make, but here verified with carbon registries and other types of certifications, this is actually how you're reducing what is in their case called scope 3 financed emissions, right? This is actually the amount of carbon emissions you're avoiding because you help somebody drive electric for less, and specifically for less than it would have cost them to get a gas car. Because a lot of people, they go to the dealerships and EVs are just too expensive, right? They would love to get that EV, but the gas car is like $200 less a month. So they rather go with that as much as they'd love to get the EV. And so for these banks, proudly, I have to say, Tenet is the first company to be able to offer them a EV exclusive investment opportunity with the data validated to actually give them that proven insight. So I think like over time, there's going to be others, right? There's always going to be more competitors, especially once something is sort of more successful. But banks are also very slow. So I think it will be 5 to 10 years plus until most of the banks, and we're speaking of, right, like thousands of banks in the US, will dedicate most of their funding towards EVs versus gas cars. Um, but hopefully, right, it's going to be sooner than that, and that's going to be on us. That's one of our mission statements: is how do we decarbonize the financial sector? How do we shift more of the assets that banks and investment managers and whatnot have into decarbonizing investments, and really align the incentives?
Yep. And what would you say, like, so I think you put out something for the next 5 to 10 years. Like, what would you say are going to be the biggest things that help this transition to happen?
Yeah. So the funny thing about financial markets is you have these true economies of scale. And what do I mean by that? Is somebody like Tenet has a lot more potential partners the bigger it gets, because there's so many of these financial institutions who are like, I can literally not be bothered to invest $5 million or $10 million, right? Because they manage trillions of dollars of assets,
Yeah.
pensions funds or charities or whatever. They got to be able to invest 100 million, a billion, right? So I think what really is going to make a difference, and that's just from our point of view, is as we scale, can we unlock these new larger partnerships where we have bigger and bigger partners and heavy hitters that dedicate a ton of financial resources towards the energy transition.
Yep.
And that is going to be fundamentally different for us over the next 5 years. Because right now, obviously, and I think we're already having really good traction and partnerships with who we have, for the fact that we're still an early stage company, right? We're a startup, we're still very scrappy. But the nice thing is, and that's the thing that matters most, is can we show these institutions a way to meaningfully deploy their capital in a way that A, helps them achieve their financial goals, but more and more also their decarbonization goals. And we do that with only funding EVs and similar renewable energy products. And then two, giving them data-driven insights that actually validates the fact that they're making a difference. Because these institutions cannot just say, well, let's cross our fingers, let's like fund $1 billion worth of EVs and let's kind of like see if we actually make a difference. No, right? They
Oh,
have to be able to prove, as
yeah.
as much as I would love that, because it would make our life a lot easier, it would
Yeah.
certainly be less impactful, right? You want to be able to build data, reporting, and infrastructure that gives them a granular sense of how every dollar that flows into the EV ecosystem and the renewable energy ecosystem actually drives an impact.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're spending most of our focus on currently, is how do we make that happen?
Yep. Yeah, well, no, this is awesome. I personally learned a lot today, and a lot of the stuff you had mentioned, I had never even thought about. I mean, there's a lot of stats that I personally have just on like the typical Tesla owner in general, on like home ownership, on their credit score, but it's awesome. I think you guys have taken it from a finance perspective, like obviously these cars are amazing cars, but how are they better? What does the typical EV owner look like as far as like their actual, like they're just a better buyer or a little bit more principled in how they handle financing. But really, you guys are using all of the stats out there to back up your data to make this transition happen. And again, you're also making the buying experience seamless and easy, especially whether you want to buy a new EV yourself or refinance. Again, I refinanced and was able to save about 120 a month. So I really think what you guys are doing is very needed in this space, and we need pioneers and people like Tenant to make this transition. So make sure to check out Tenet.com. Also, make sure to give Alexander a follow. He's at Alexander Legal on Twitter. But thank you so much for just sharing and dropping all of the knowledge. And thank you, obviously, for being a partner of Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley. But we need people like you to shake up things, especially in like the financing space, to show like why are EVs better, and not only why are they better, but how their retention rate is over, let's say, 14 to 16 years. I think you had said how the car actually retains its value, how the buyers are better to, again, get more of these old financial institutions on board. But even yourselves, as you guys are showing the old financial institutions like why it's better, why they should do this transition, you guys are pioneering it yourselves and taking that on yourselves. So but yeah, any closing thoughts? Other than that, I again just really appreciate your time and joining us today.
No, I mean, it was such a blast, right? I think we have so much ahead of us. It's kind of insane. The company's already, right, it's only 2 years old. We actually had our 2-year anniversary last
Congrats.
Friday, and it was like I can't believe it, right? It's 2 years, but it feels like 10, but in a good way, right? In the sense of you feel like you accomplished so much, and then you realize it's only day one, right? It's always going to be day one, especially in EV and renewable energy and climate, right? Things are moving so fast, and sort of the opportunity is always just expanding. That shit, there's so much to build. So I couldn't be more excited. And yeah, look, really had so much fun here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it. Definitely, if you're looking at buying an EV or refinancing, make sure to check out Tenant. Again, it's one of those places where you will definitely find some of the best rates, if not the best rate, because they are factoring in all of the amazing things of owning an EV and that ownership into their pricing. So whether it's the EV tax credit, the deferral at the back end, setting up auto payment, all of those things, plus many more things, are factored into getting you the best price per month. So definitely give them
Give us
them
a call. Check us out.
give us a call. Check them out. I would say like and subscribe, but you can't really do that. But yeah, Alex, again, thank you for your time. It's a little bit later in the day for you, but thank you for joining us, at least on the West Coast, early morning. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And yeah, thanks to anybody who checked out this stream. John, so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Thank you.
All right, see ya.